Praise God. So happy to be back with you today as we are going to learn on the book of Philippians. Today, I want to point by point share with you why should I read this letter? Why should I read this letter? Why study Philippians? Now, there must be a reason for us to study each book. Now, why should I read this letter? Number one, many Christians are focused on getting through each day. Many Christians are focused on getting through each day. But Paul's ambition was a focus for the future. I hope you wrote it down. Many Christians are very focused on getting through each day. Somehow we need to pass this day. God has to do a miracle. They are totally focused on their basic needs. But Apostle Paul's ambition was a longer period, a relationship with Jesus Christ. I hope it's very clear to you. Or a longer term of spiritual focus. Don't worry about your day-to-day, what has to be done. But in your spiritual life, you should concentrate on your long-term spiritual desire. What is your focus from now to the next 20 years about your walk with God? That is the secret of what Apostle Paul is saying. It sounds very real, right? Because a lot of us, we focus about our day-to-day affairs and we forget the longer term of our relationship with God. So keep it in mind, our spiritual ambition should be our long-term walk with God. Is it clear? Number two, we need to read Philippians because Paul has set a beautiful example for us to follow. Paul has set a beautiful example for us to follow. If I use another word, Paul has set a high standard in his spiritual life so that we all could follow that. A high standard of spiritual life. And so we can be imitators of Jesus, number one. And here, seeing the life of Paul, we can be imitators of what Paul has done for God's kingdom. So that's why I read the book of Philippians, because of the high standards set by Paul for us to follow, to be effective in God's kingdom. Number three, the reason I need to read the book of Philippians is we have not lived Christian life to the fullest if we do not cry out in quotes, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. We have not lived our Christian life to the fullest if we do not cry out saying, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. You understand? Now think of your relationship with God right now, about your relationship with God, and compare it with Apostle Paul's desire for God. You see that? Where do we stand? If I am here, and where is Apostle Paul standing? He is like way beyond. Because if we do not come to that conviction, if I live for Christ. If I die, I live with Christ. That should be our end result of our lives. And as believers, if we have not come to that level of maturity, then we need to really read the epistle written to the Philippian church. My son and I, we were sitting for almost 1-2 hours, and we were just talking about the shift and plans and various other things. And then my son was telling me, Dad, a lot of youngsters who come to our church, they tell him that how their parents live at home and how they are acting in the church. When I heard that, I felt so sad. He said, Dad, a lot of youngsters tell me, Pastor, my parents, they come, they are there before Pastor, they all the time they look as if they are very holy, prayerful. But actually, Pastor, the moment we get into the car, they start fights. The moment we go home, there's so much of bad words. So my son was telling, Dad, see how the life is. I want to encourage all believers who are listening to me right now. We need to increase our standards as believers. We need to. 100% without any shadow of doubt. All of us must increase our standards as believers. Because each one, according to his standards, can build his tent. So I pray that even as you are listening to me, this will not be just for you only to study, but these teachings will bring a revolution in your basic personal life. Some youngsters have told my son, the words my parents use at home, my father to my mother and my mother to my father, Pastor Paul, uncle will never believe that they are the ones who are behaving so holy in front of him. I'm not surprised, but I'm not upset. But I pray that the Holy Spirit will help every believer to raise up his standards to such a level where your children will say, let's follow the footsteps of our parents because they are faithfully following Jesus. You understand? And he told me one more thing, it really hit me. He said, Dad, a lot of youngsters come and tell me, we don't have the relationship you have with Uncle Paul. Pastor Uncle, you both are like so close and friendly to each other. Same, I'm with my daughter, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, my wife, my family. And so the relationship we have as father and son, they have told, several of them have told, we don't have such a relationship with our father. I encourage all those parents who are watching me today. As I told you, we need to walk, leave the footmarks so that our children can follow those footmarks and they can also rise up to a higher standard in their spiritual life. So Apostle Paul says, for me, the ultimate purpose of my Christian life is to live for Jesus or die for Jesus. Now, fourthly, why we need to read Philippians. Number 4. If we are not prepared to meet the challenges and press towards ahead, we are not ready to forget the past. If we are not ready to face the challenges in life and press forward, then we are having a major problem with our spiritual maturity. You understand? So that's why we need to read Philippians. He's saying there are so many challenges in life. I don't need to tell you. You know it by yourself. But if we are not willing to forget the challenges and press forward, then we are going to struggle in our spiritual walk with God. So you will be like one day high, second day low, third day the lowest, and the seventh day you are in the peak. Your life will keep twisting like this. And you will struggle throughout your spiritual life. Till you die, you'll be struggling to walk with God. So that's why Paul says, there will be challenges in life. Who doesn't have challenges in life? All of us, we have challenges in life. But if you are not willing to forget the challenges and press forward towards God, we are not going to be fruitful Christians. We will be prayer request Christians. You understand? All the time we'll send a prayer request. Pray for my husband, pray for my wife, pray for my children. And now my husband is okay. But you know what? I want you to pray so that he'll be really okay. Or pray for my wife. You know, she's really acting so demonic. And so now she's become an angel. But please pray that she needs to change more. Pastor, pray for my job. I got a job now. But now you pray for me so that I'll get a promotion. So you become a prayer request believer. You all the time have prayer requests. But you have never learned to face challenges and grow to the higher level. Every time you send a prayer request. We need to read Philippians and understand our Christian life is not just prayer requests. Our Christian life is we are pressing on to overcome. I heard some of you saying an amen. So challenges will 100% come. Now COVID-19, It came. Now so many people are saying this COVID is from God to punish the world. 1000% I disagree with that. And if anybody is teaching like that, I don't know why they are teaching like that. For me, in this world, there will be all types of challenges. But we have to be so matured that we will not look at the challenges, but we will look to press on to achieve the target during our lifetime, what God has set for us. Ebola came, chikungunya, whatever, it came, and then so many other types of sicknesses came. Some yellow fever, so many types of plagues have come. I don't believe that it is sent by God to punish us. The only thing I can tell you is that we need to face challenges in life. But we should not forget to press on in the midst of the challenges. So I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, you didn't read the Bible, you didn't go to church, and because you didn't give your offering, because you didn't do this, do that. Now God has sent Corona to punish the whole world. The whole world was like this, running away from God. God punished the world. I don't think I will say that anytime. I will only say in this context, challenges will be there. Apostle Paul. So you mean to say that God put Apostle Paul in the jail? Challenges are there in life. These are all challenges. But we should always think and keep our focus to press forward towards God. I hope I made it very clear. Many theologians, if you're watching me, I'm sure you agree with me in what I believe. Because if I go and tell the whole world or preach every day that Corona is from God and He has sent this to punish all of us, I don't think that is good news. Gospel is good news about redemption. And so I want all of you to understand this. Say it again, challenges will be there. But our goal is to press on. You got it? And that's why we need to read Philippians. I will be taking chapter by chapter, verse by verse, to teach you so that we can finish these 4 books and master to an extent on Philippians. Okay? Now you continue to write as you are doing. Our desire should be, I want to know Him. Our desire should be, like Apostle Paul, I want to know Him more. That's why we need to read Philippians. Our whole purpose should be, I want to know Christ, is to get to the root of what life is all about. I want to know Christ is to get to the root of life is all about. I want to know Him in a special way so that I can walk with Him. You understand? That is the basic thing in Philippians. I want to know Him. Now, for an example, if I give you, Apostle Paul said, almost 30 to 35 years, he has served God. By this time, he is imprisoned. Over 35 years, he has served God. But within this, after this almost 35 years of serving God, he says, I want to know Him. That is the root for our life. That's the root for our life. In our spiritual life, we must come to such an extent, we would say, I want to know Him. See there, that should be our desire today. That's why we need to read the Philippians. Yesterday I gave all of you, and I said to you to send me now I said unity plus humility equals to what? Now, many of you sent me. It was really good. But I have selected one. Unity plus humility equals to ability and stability. Sounds good, right? Unity plus humility equals to ability and stability of life. Now, thank you for sending this. And you have really watched it well. So many others have sent me. So many. But I felt this was good. Unity plus humility equals to ability and stability. Ability and stability. Now that's what is Apostle Paul is talking about. That I want to know Him. Stability. I'm in the prison, but I have not given up. These are all challenges for me. I want to know Him more. Who will say that? Tell me. Many would have said, God has put me in the prison, so now my days are over, I'm going to die here. But Apostle Paul never said one word about that. He said, I want to know Him. See, that is the topmost maturity of a believer. Now let's go to point number 7 or 6. Why I need to read Philippians. Because many Christians do not naturally live lives full of joy. Why do I need to read Philippians? Because many Christians do not naturally live lives full of joy. You know why? Write it down. Because we focus on the negatives. We focus on the negatives and problems. We focus on the negatives and the problems rather than God's amazing presence and His work in us. I hope you got it. If you have not, I'll say it again. Please write it. Why many believers do not live a life of joy? Why? Throughout they are sad. Throughout they are sending prayer requests. Throughout they are going through conflicts. But when you read Philippians, you will find out that how in spite of all these things, my focus is not my challenges. My focus is not my present problem. My focus is on the future that God has prepared for me. I hope you got it. So now you write this. The reason many believers don't live a life of joy is because, write it down, they focus on negative things all the time. All the time they focus on the negative. And problems. They prayed, God gave them a beautiful apartment or a house. And now they feel, why I bought this house? See, their mind works all the time negatively. They don't look at something and appreciate. The first reaction of them is negative. If you are a person like that, high time that we changed. So that we can make a negative situation positive and a sad situation joyful. So why many Christians don't live a joyful life? It's because they focus on the negatives and the problems. And they forget to understand the amazing presence of God they have, and they can enjoy it. Okay, fine. 99.9%, everything has gone wrong. But I have 0.1%. I'm going to be joyful. Man, you will turn it the other way. 99.9%, you will start to enjoy the presence of God. And you will be joyful in the midst of the worst challenges of your life. You understand? So it is good we read Philippians, number 7 or 8. We must remind ourselves. We must remind ourselves that we have good reasons to rejoice and to be joyful. We must remind ourselves that we have good reasons to be joyful and to rejoice. COVID-19 and everything got locked down. Now we could have just stayed at home, and I could have been at home and cursed the world and just got totally saturated to Netflix or news or this or that. I determined that I would not do that. Today is 1040th day of prayer. 42nd day, I'm in this office. And once when we decide, I have so many reasons to rejoice and to be joyful. Shifted with the family discussion, shifted here, and then got my media boys. 1,000 times thanks to my media. They are just with me here. They're having bath here, sleeping here, eating here. They order in the nights and they eat food now. Before that, our chef used to supply to them. And so, there's so many things. Today I'm so joyful and happy in the midst of a negative situation. Today I'm able to speak to thousands of people in the morning, in the evening. Touch the lives of people. See, you must find reasons why you should be joyful and you should be, happy. Some people all the time, they love to live a negative life. Get out of it if you are doing that. Because you can enjoy life. Those who are so scared to fly in a plane, they have a miserable flight. Before it lands, they have gone through ICU 3 times. They have gone through ventilator 5 times. They have gone through all injections. And by the time they land and come out, they are like, oh man, this is all? But there are people who are sitting there and they think that they are the ones who are controlling the entire flight, enjoying to the best. And the moment it lands, they think, oh, so fast we landed. See, everything is right in front of you. Read Philippians. You will understand how to be joyful and to rejoice. Number 8, I want you to read this, write this. People are always divisive. People are always divisive. And they find it easy to disagree. Write it down. People are always divisive. And they find it easy to disagree. And that's why, write it down. And that's why Paul says, live in unity. You understand? Live in unity. People are divisive and they find it very easy to disagree. And that's why Paul says, live in unity. 4 people in a family, 5 people in a family. Imagine I'm handling a church of 25,000 and more. And all types of things people have to say. But I work hard to keep the unity within the church. Just imagine 4 people in a family struggle in relationship. And here a single man with the grace and the help of God, handling a congregation with over 26,000 people. We send SMSs alone, 27,000 SMSs to our church members. So you know, 27,000 means anything digital it's no exaggeration. 27,000 SMSs goes. That's what my IT brother Stephen has told me. More than 12,000 emails we send. So you know to the extent we have grown. In the midst of all these things, many have several different things happening. Feel sad, some are upset, some are happy, some are like this, some are like that. Paul says it's easy to be divisive and live in disagreement. But we must focus on unity. You understand? That's why we need to read Philippians. Now I want you to, because the time is flying, I must finish this today on why we need to read Philippians. Now see here, our sinful nature encourages us, write it down, our sinful nature encourages us to replace God's way of doing things with our own. I hope you got it. I'm sure many didn't get it. I want to tell it slowly because I want you to write this and assimilate on this. Our sinful nature, you got it? Encourages us to replace God's way of doing things with our own. God has this requirement. But my sinful nature says, you do this and replace God to this. So that's why in Philippians, you will read this to find out the solutions to such problems. The important factor is when you start to replace God with your sinful, manful ideas, you have kept God away and you have become a mini God to yourself. And so you find it tough to decide, make a decision. Every time you make a decision, you fail within 3 months. And you are literally struggling. Because why? Because we have replaced God's desires with our desires. Number 9, this epistle challenges us to play a part in the advancement of the gospel. I love to emphasize on this, but we have time problems, so I would quickly take you through this. You got that point I gave you now? This letter challenges us to ask if we are playing a part in the advancement of the gospel. This epistle challenges us to ask that question, whether we are playing a part in advancing the gospel. That's why Philippians is very important. If you say, no, I don't do anything. I come to church, I sit there, I sing, I clap, I partake in communion, I give the offerings. That's it. I listen to the word, I go back home. I'm a non-active member. But Philippians says that every believer must play a part in the advancement of the gospel. Every believer. Apostle Paul never said that only he. No. He says even though he is imprisoned, the gospel is going forward. And he says the same way, every believer, if you are a young man watching me, or a young woman watching me, elderly people, whoever you are, my question, not to put you down, but to encourage you, are you playing a role within the church for the advancement of the gospel? If you are not playing a role, we must read Philippians. Because in 80% of the churches, you have 80% of the people who are non-active in spreading the gospel. Cut right? I believe that. 80% of the people in every church do not get involved in the advancement of the gospel. For them, I have a church, I'm happy. I have a pastor, I'm happy. I go to church, I sit there, I lift my hand, worship God, I clap, I pray a little bit in tongues, I give my tithes, my offerings, I partake in communion, listen to a message, I come. That's it. Monday to Saturday, I am in work. But Philippians doesn't agree with that. Epistle says that every believer, if 27,000 people in our church, each one play a role in the advancement of the gospel, where FGAG will be today, we may need a huge grounds of 10 acres to populate the people there on a Sunday. Now I don't want to take time because I need to finish this for you today. In number 10 or 11, whatever you are writing, number 10 let's say, the question is, write it down. Do we live our lives in a manner worthy of the gospel? Do we live our lives in a manner worthy of the gospel? You got it? Do we live our lives in a manner worthy of the gospel? What does the gospel preach? And do I live according to the gospel? Back to Philippians. In conclusion, I want you to write maybe point number 11 or 12. Write it down. Are we driven? Are we driven by that gospel-centered desire? Are we driven by that gospel-centered desire to know Jesus each day better than yesterday? You got it? Are we driven by that gospel-centered desire to know Jesus better each day than the previous day? So that's why we need to meditate and study Philippians. I've given you several points because we need to ask these questions, and once when we provoke our thinking, we can start meditating chapter by chapter. I pray that if, let's say, even 10 people are watching me today, I pray that all 10 of you will become like the believers in the Philippian church. You will play a major role in the advancement of the gospel. You will say, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And you will say, I want to know him more. And you will say, I want to live in unity for the gospel's sake. Man, your life will just turn around. I hope you enjoyed this teaching up to now. These are all the introductory part. I've set up a pace for you to understand this epistle to the Philippian church. And I pray there are 4 chapters, and more than 16 times Apostle Paul uses the word to be joyful. The word joy and rejoice comes over 16 times. I want to ask you a question. Tell me the scripture that says about Christology, Christ's whole purpose of coming to the world. Chapter 1, chapter 2, or chapter 3, or chapter 4. Whichever chapter you said, chapter 2 verses 5 onwards is the correct answer. So I pray that today, that God will bring, as we have read this so beautifully, unity plus humility equals to ability and stability. I'm going to put this in my book, which I'm going to write, and I pray that God will build us together even as we are learning on Philippians.